Hey, macro students, this is Mr. Hooker, and today we are working on Chapter 2, the market system and the circular flow. So let's get to the action here. Here we go. So what are economic systems? They are the set of institutionalized arrangements that determine how a country or economic unit will operate. They are the coordinating mechanism. So you could have laissez-faire, you could have a market system, a mixed system, you could have a command system. We in the U.S. are a mixed system. We have mostly a market system, and then we have some government provided resources. We have public education, public roads, public libraries, those kind of things, right? So the differences in the systems exist by the degree of the decentralized use of markets and prices. So in the decision making, so how much is market based and how much is government controlled? If you think of the old Soviet Union, and really it's kind of getting back to that. Um, China, not so much recent. They're trying to go. They're kind of dual thing. They want to go market based, but they really kind of don't. So there are a lot in the way of command economy. Old Cuba was a command economy, and North Korea currently is a command economy, and the degree of centralized government control. So that's what you're looking at. So laissez-faire capitalism, you keep the government from interfering. All the government is there for is to protect the private property from theft and provide a legal environment for contract enforcement. So there are no government provided roads, there's no government education, there's no government libraries, um, there's no government provided anything. The private market will provide everything. So literally, the school you are currently attending, Pellissippi State Community College, would not exist in a laissez-faire capitalistic society because it is a state school. Um, Only private schools would exist, and you would have to pay private school rates if you wanted to go to college. And the whole idea of government subsidies for private schools, which is basically how most private schools exist today, would not exist because, well, it's laissez-faire capitalism. So if you couldn't afford to pay, then, well, you couldn't go, which is kind of how colleges worked back in the day when I went to college. Um, Literally, I mean, like they've changed student aid now, where now you can borrow a ton of money. Back in the day, there was a cap on what you could borrow, and the rest you had to pay out of pocket. Um, and so, if you could not afford that amount that you had to pay out of pocket, then you were told basically, hey, then college just isn't for you. Have a nice day. And it was kind of a sobering, eye opening kind of thing. Um, so in those days, if you had multiple children, a lot of families, and like my family, they would save to send one child to college. So you kind of just like gauge and pick, like, okay, that kid seems to be smart enough to go to college, send them to college. Um, it's a really weird thing, but that was the way it was back in the 70s and 80s. And then all of a sudden they deregulated student loans. And now you can go out and get $250,000 of student loans and you have a student loan crisis. So I don't know which is better. That's a thought for everybody. Just a rant, I guess. I probably shouldn't have gone on that rant, but that's a rant. But you can think about it and see, think about which you think is better. All right, so people interact in the markets to buy and sell and find the market price. So the command system, known as socialism or communism, government owns the resources. Um, this is the way they're describing it is more the communist than the socialist way. Government owns the resources, decision made by a central planning board. So this was like the old USSR. There was a central planning board. I think back then it was 10 people that decided exactly everything that was going to get made in the Soviet Union. So those 10 people basically just tell the firms exactly what to make. And so, if you had, um, let's say, if somebody, we want to make axes, somebody's going to call firm A and say, I need you to make 1,000 axe heads. Somebody else is going to call firm B, I need you to make 1,000 axe handles. They're going to tell them both to ship them to firm C, and somebody's going to call firm C and say, I need you to put together the axe heads and the axe handles and make axes and ship them off to the consumers. And so that is how axes would get made. And so that is the way that would work. So some current examples: North Korea, Cuba, and Myanmar. The market system is the mix of the decentralized decision making with some government control, and this is what we are right now. There's the mix, it's the market system is found much of the world. Private markets are the dominant force. There's the private ownership of resources. Everybody acts self-interested. There are some government provided resources, though, or government provided items. So you have private property, freedom of enterprise. Everybody acts in their self-interest. There's a lot of competition going on. The price is found through markets. Technology is the king, so we're trying to use the latest technology. We have the capital goods that we use. We're trying to use the capital goods to produce things to become more productive. We use specialization. We use money. We have an active but limited government that provides some things, but not everything. The index of economic freedom for selected countries 2021. You've got Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, top that are very free, mostly free. UAE, the US at 20, Germany at 29, moderately free. Spain, Italy, Russia, 39, 69, 68, and 92. Mostly unfree: Nigeria, India, Brazil, and then repressed: Iran, Venezuela, North Korea down at 178. All right, technology and capital goods. Advanced technology and capital goods are encouraged. That gets us to specialization, where if we have really good capital goods, we will specialize. Then we can do division of labor. You do this, I'll do this. We can specialize, become very good at it, become fast. We can produce a heck of a lot more and produce more goods, make more money. And everybody wants to make more money. Remember, the goal of every firm is to maximize profits. You can also have geographic specialization. We grow oranges in Florida and wheat in Kansas for a reason. Corn in Iowa. There's a fight on I used to live in Nebraska. There's a fight on a regular basis about who grows better corn, Iowa or Nebraska. Understand, they are right next to each other, and yet they fight. Who has better corn? Go for it, figure it out. If you're from the area, say it. I know Miss Kaufman is from Iowa. I lived in Nebraska for years. I don't really know, and honestly, I don't really care. It's just one of those things. So money makes trade easier. It is a medium of exchange. We'll talk about it more in depth later when we get to chapters 14 and 15. Without money, you're going to have to barter, and that causes problems, because if you have to barter, nowadays it's not as much problems as it was for the old times. But back in the day, if you were having to barter, it was basically one of those things where you would have, you'd have to care, you've got a double coincidence of wants. You have to want what somebody else has the same way that they, at the same value, they want what you have, and you both have to have it wanted at the same time. So you have to value them at the same rate, and you have to want them at the same time, and you have to meet. So it's kind of one of those things. So here's this money facilitating trade is basically Nebraska has a surplus of wheat. That should be corn. Nebraska doesn't grow a whole lot of wheat. It's way more corn. Kansas is wheat. Florida, surplus of oranges, but wants wheat. Idaho has a surplus of potatoes and wants oranges. So Nebraska buys potatoes from Idaho. Um, Florida sells oranges to Idaho, and Florida buys wheat from Nebraska. So it's kind of easy how that goes. Your active but limited government. Government may be needed to alleviate market failures. They can increase the effectiveness of a market system. You could get government failure. Market failure happens when we do not reach the optimal market output. We don't reach the optimal output, we have market failure. And that happens pretty much daily. Nobody cares. Government failure happens when the government gets involved and does not make us better off. And this doesn't happen as often, but when it happens, people get upset. Government officials are people too, but people get upset if the government gets involved and does not make us better off. And they're like, oh, you did something and you didn't make me better off. Y'all need to just get out of here. Oh, well, it's just what happens. 5 basic questions you ask with all of this when we're doing it. What goods and services are going to be produced? How are we going to make them? Who gets them? How will we accommodate change? And how will we promote progress? So what's going to be produced? Anything that makes a profit. If it makes profit, somebody will make it. It's all called consumer sovereignty or dollar votes. People vote with their dollars. So if you make it and people like it, they'll buy it. So you may have never thought of it this way, but every time you buy something, the message you're sending to the producer is, I like it, make another one. And so even if you don't like it, you throw it away, the message you sent was, hey, I like it, make another one. This allows the consumers to indicate which goods and services should be produced and determines which products survive in industry survive and fail. So if nobody buys it, that just means that, hey, it goes away. And so this is kind of why Furbies went away and why, and then people start buying them again and they come back, and really they just need to go away. How will the goods be produced? It's going to be produced in the least cost way. So minimize the cost per unit by using the most efficient techniques. So when we talk about efficiency, we'll get into this a little bit more in chapter 3. I believe it's chapter 3. We'll get into that. But basically, there's productive efficiency and then there's allocative efficiency. But productive efficiency is at the least cost way. And so that's what we're going to do. So when we say efficiency in general, we mean least cost production method. So using good technology and lowest price of the necessary resources. So if we're making $15 worth of bar soap and we have 3 techniques, and technique number 1, we're going to use 4 units of labor, 1 unit of land, 1 capital, 1 entrepreneurship, and it's going to cost us $15. Technique 2 is 2 labor, 3 land, 1 capital, 1 entrepreneur, and it's $13. And technique 3 is 1 labor, 4 land, 2 capital, and 1 entrepreneur, and it's $15. Chances are we're going to go with technique 2. That is your least cost method, and that's what we are looking for. So who gets the output? Whoever can buy it, whoever can afford it. If you can afford it and you can, you have the money, consumers with the ability and willingness to pay, they get the product. And that all depends on income. So part of that comes back to producing it at the least cost method. So if you produce it at the least cost method, you are appealing to a broader group of people. So if you produce it at a higher cost, you're really shrinking your market because you've made it at a higher cost, and therefore you have to have a higher income to buy it. And so lower cost means you have a higher market. How will we accommodate change? As tastes change, we will basically change what we do. Technology changes, we have to adapt, and change in resource price or availability, we have to adapt to that as well. How will the system progress? The technological advances, creative destruction. One of my favorite macro theories is the hypothesis that creation of new products and production methods destroys the market power of existing monopolies. Basically, this is Joseph Schumpeter's baby. It says basically, um, entrepreneurs come in and they look at the market and they say, well, this is what the market needs. And as they bring that in, it kills off old things, right? So the car killed off the horse and buggy. The electric light killed off the gas light. Streaming killed off DVDs. It's also killing off cable. CDs killed off cassette and record players. So there's a lot of different creative destruction out there. We also have capital accumulation, but you can't just have capital accumulation for nothing. That capital has to be useful in production. You don't just build capital for nothing. The invisible hand, as stated by Adam Smith, the world's first economist, is the tendency of competition to cause individuals and firms to unintentionally but effectively promote the interest of society when each individual firm only attempts to pursue its own interest. This was put forth in Adam Smith's uh, first major economics work in 1776. Easy to remember, it's the year we became a country, a general inquiry into the wealth of nations. So it's the unity, it talks about the unity of private and social interest. It's the first ever example, really, of you do you. So if you go out and do what you need to do in your own self interest, unintentionally, you also move and promote the interest of society. So this is the virtue of the market system. It's efficient, it provides incentives, and it is all about freedom. So this was put forth as he was looking at the first industrial revolution in the 1700s. Demise of command systems. Command systems failed to deliver adequate amounts of goods and services. Soviet Union, North Korea, and pre-reform China. There's a coordination problem. They have to correctly set output targets for all goods and services, which is a pain. You can do some, piece of cake, but it's hard to do them all and get them right for the consumers. The consumers not be upset. And there's an incentive problem. There's no adjustment for surplus or shortage, and also an incentive problem for the workers. They have no incentive to get all this stuff right. So, circular flow model, we're going to look at a private closed economy right now. We'll look at another economy later in a circular flow. But it's a great model just to give you an idea of how this works. There are two participants, households and firms, and two markets, a product market and a resource market. And we're going to look at a flow of money and a flow of goods and services. So let's get to this. You see a resource market on top, a product market on the bottom, firms on the left, households on the right. So we have the four factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. They all start in the households, with the households. So here's how that works. Households in that red, with that red thing on the bottom. So in the inner circle, that is all goods and resources and goods and services. The blue, that's the red. And the blue on the outside, that's all money flows. Okay. So that red flow from households to the resource market to the top is land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability to the resource market. So households are selling it, businesses are buying it, and technically you're selling, the households are selling it into the resource market. It's pretty simple. You're in the resource market, you're selling your land through realtors, you're selling your labor through maybe an employment agency. If you're using a lot of times we just do that straight to the firm. Capital, you would be doing that through banks. Entrepreneurial ability, maybe through a small business development center. Firms buy it from the resource market. To them, it's just a resource. Firms are transformational. They don't just take it to have it. They transform it into something that we can use. They transform it into something useful. They transform it into goods and services, which they send to the product market because they can make it useful, but they really suck at making it, at presenting it really nice for us to buy. So they send it to the product market, which would be your Walmart, your Tractor Supply, your Target, your Best Buy, whatever. Right? And so the product market makes it look really nice, makes you buy stuff that you normally wouldn't buy, and boom, we buy those within that becomes goods and services that we take home, and it's sitting on your shelf and you never use it. So that's that stuff. All right, so now let's look at the money flows. Let's go from the households back around. All right. So the money that you spent for the goods and services is consumption spending. So that's going to be the same C that we used later in the class for GDP. So that C for goods and services is the C that you will see for GDP. And then that becomes revenue for a firm as it leaves the product market and goes to the firm. That is revenue. And as the firm pays for your resources, that is just a cost of doing business to the firm. So that is a cost. And then the money that the firm pays for your land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. For your land, they pay rent. For your labor, they pay wages. For your capital, they pay interest. And for your entrepreneurial ability, you get the profit. So those are all of the costs associated with that. All right. This is going to be a slightly longer video just because normally last time I stopped here, but I noticed that there's only 3 slides left, so we're going to keep going. So how we deal with risk. Business owners and investors face risk. They have the loss due to input shortages and changes in consumer taste. So if people change, but you've got to deal with it or you're out of business. They also have to deal with natural disasters, tornadoes, hurricanes if you're on the coast. So as those happen, if they mess with your business, you've got to pay for that or have insurance. You're going to face those risks. The employees and suppliers have security. You're going to get paid whether they make a profit or not. Basically, you might get laid off. I mean, at-will employment's terrible in that sense. You may get laid off, but otherwise, you're getting paid. Business risks are restricted to the owners. They track the needed inputs. They're easier to obtain since most people dislike risk. Most people are risk averse. So this focuses the attention. The owners are personally responsible for the outcome, and that encourages prudent decisions. So you really don't want a very risky person, but you want a somewhat risk-taking person. Manage the risk well, and the owner prospers. So you want some risk, but not a lot of risk. The last word here, hasta la vista, Venezuela. Venezuela's economy on the verge of collapse. Staples like food and gas too expensive and or unavailable. They've gone with the Bolivarian socialism. They've had hyperinflation. It's just lines in the supermarket. It is insane. Food staples are just massively expensive, and people are just crossing the borders to get out. It's just nuts. So some things just aren't worth it. That's it for chapter 2. Y'all have a great day. I'll see you in chapter 3.